Okay, with this video, we're going to talk about Inside Sign Design, 336 pages, and this is going to be an overview, just an overview, and then we're going to talk about the table of contents, and then we'll also talk about the page breakdown. So let's get started. We are going to go to the book, and we are going to look at the cover and see that this is everything you need to know to make incredible sign designs that work. And previously, my company was Chatterbox Designs. Now the company is signbusinessbooks.com. So this cover is going to be changed in subsequent layouts of this book. So there's a lot of things that we're not going to cover that I don't think are relevant to this overview, but we are going to talk about the chapters 1 through 7, required knowledge before designing signs. We're going to go over that a little bit. And then chapters 8 through 14, sign design, these specific areas. And I want to stop here for a moment because this overview is going to touch on these, and then in subsequent videos I'll get a little bit more in depth in it. So chapters 1 through 7, required knowledge before designing signs. There's 7 different people that are going to see a sign drawing. Now when I say 7, sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 8, sometimes it's 9. So that 7 figure is a variable figure, but when you read that chapter, and it's, let's see how many pages it is. That chapter 1 is 8 pages. So if you go over it and think, when you do sign design, you'll see, the more you do sign design, you'll see that there's different people involved with reviewing a drawing. But unlike graphic design, where the graphic designer designs for their boss and the customer and the public, which is basically 3 people, okay? And of course the designer's designing for themselves because they like what they're designing. That's why they're designing it. So they're also part of the audience. But the main 3 people for a graphic designer is the boss, the customer, and the public. In sign design, there's almost a minimum of 7 people involved, whether it's non-illuminated or illuminated. And when it's non-illuminated and it has no permits, that number 7 will go down to like 5. It might even go down to 4, but it's a sliding number. Chapter 2, what goes on a new sign project, new project drawing. Now this book was based on designing for electrical sign design. Okay, so there's I think there's something in here, ADA signs and interior signs that are not electrical, but this chapter talks about what goes on a new project drawing. And number 3, the sign request process. Now if you look at the page breakdowns of these, you'll see that they're chapter 2, there's 17 pages, so that one goes pretty much in depth, but the sign design request is 6 pages, so it's not so in depth. So chapter 4, now this whole premise of this section, chapters 1 through 7, is chapter 4. I would say it's material knowledge and fabrication knowledge. It's very, very important to know some basics, and when I keep saying basics, it literally is just the basics. You don't need to know how to weld or install. So this is very important for anybody who's new to this, or even those that have been in this a while that really still struggle with sign design, which I've met a lot of people. So that's chapter 4. Chapter 5 is page layout, also called presentation layout. Some people call them proofs, some people call them concept drawings. There's a lot of different things you can call them. You can call them sales drawings, but you're presenting a layout to the customer, and yes, you are trying to sell it. And the word proof and concept comes from the old school and old days, which has fallen over to today, which is still applicable. Production files and production drawing. Production files are the actual files. Production drawings will be the PDF that is sent to the production designer. That person may be one and the same person. In mid-sized companies and larger sized companies, there's a sign designer, graphic designer, sign designer. Then there's a production designer, and that's a separate position, and that's where these files go, the production files. So production files can be called production art, production files, but it's important to get this terminology down and to slowly and talk to art salespeople and people involved in it, because they don't know this terminology. They only say, hey, it's sold. and they don't know anything to say after that. They're really, even if you explain it to them, they lose their mind. So number 7 is sign industry terms, knowing the language. I think this is very important. You don't have to learn it immediately. You can go over this stuff in time. I would say this is a process. Don't beat yourself up. I would say from week to week, not even day to day. If you're going to go after day to day, that's fine too, but read it from week to week. Revisit it a little bit here and there, because it's an ongoing adventure and a process and a journey. You're not going to get this overnight. It takes time. So chapters 8 through 14, these are going to be a subsequent video too, but let's go over them. Why did I pick these particular sign types? So channel letters is a sign type. A sign cabinet is a sign type. A blade sign is a sign type. An ADA sign is a sign type. So chapter 8 talks about channel letters, and there's so much that can be written about channel letters, but I only wrote about 24 pages on this because it would be an entire book, which I do want to make chapters 8 through 14 each an individual book, because then I can elaborate on it more and make it clear, make it larger, make it simpler, and make it faster. And that's the whole premise. Make it simpler, make it faster, make it easy, less reading, more graphics, and more how-to, on-the-job, training, reference. It literally has to be like this. This book was written out of anger, and because there was nothing on the subject, and I just got so mad because there's nothing on the subject, and this is partly why this book was made. So chapter 9 talks about sign monuments, and chapter 10 talks about pylon signs, and I call these two types of signs pinnacle signs. And pinnacle signs are the biggest type of signs that are commonly sold in the sign business. It has nothing to do with Vegas or theme park signs or the highway signs, which have 60 and 80 and 100 foot pole signs. This has to do with the most commonly designed and most commonly sold sign designs in the sign business. Sign monuments and pylons. And then I covered electronic message centers because at the time, 15 years ago, they were becoming more prevalent. And I wanted to touch on that because I had seen so many drawings that were just driving me nuts. 12, improving directionals and wayfinding signage. Now, most wayfinding signage is hands down horrible. Just too thin, too small, and is designed to provide direction and wayfinding, which it does just the opposite. People can't see it, they can't read it, they can't identify it. And so European designers come to America and they see American wayfinding signage and they just shake their head. So I touch on that subject. So I clump in chapter 13, I clump in all of the interior signs into one chapter, and it doesn't touch on every single interior sign. It touches on, of course, some of the most common. But once you get these chapters down, once you understand how to do channel letters or monument signs or going down to interior signs and ADA signs. So the first two chapters, chapters 8 and 9, and number 13 and 14, the last two, those would cover the most, I would say at the electrical side, the most common, and then on the 13 and 14, the most common interior signs. So that's the way I wrote this book. So when I go back and say that channel letters and monument signs, those would cover all your wall signs and all your ground signs. So if you know how to design monument signs, you can do wayfinding ground signs, pole signs, the smaller pad signs. For channel letters, that would cover logo designs, channel boxes, text capsules, and sign cabinets. So that's the premise. Once you get these concepts down, it can be applied to other sign types. So what we're not going to do is we're not going to get into chapters 15 and the rest of the stuff. 16, 17, 18, 19, those things are just discussing areas in the sign business that a lot of graphic designers are not aware of. So let's look through the book real quick. Sign designer versus graphic designer. I think there's 3 pages. I explain the difference. I wrote this when I was getting a revelation of sign design. So I would read this. I think it's very important. I was getting a revelation from graphic design to sign design, and this is why I wrote it. The coloring on the title blocks are not too great. Go to B, C, and D. You can read it. It's no big deal if you don't. So let's go to chapter 1. Chapter 1, design and drawing for 7 different people. Now, this is what I was talking about regarding the number of people that you're going to be drawing for as a sign designer. Why is this important? Okay, so when you see my drawings and my layouts and how I do stuff, what I've learned to do is cut out all the stuff that does not need to be on the drawing, which will waste your time if you add it. And then what I've designed, the way I design my drawings is specific information that someone on this list of 7 people is going to read on your drawings. That is the reason why I draw my drawings the way I draw them, and the reason why I touch on this chapter, because it's important for designers to know if they're coming from graphic design to sign design, that the audience is completely different. They have to know that. So that's chapter 1. Let's see, that's chapter 1 is 8 pages. So this is a page breakdown. Chapter 1 is 8 pages. The second one is 17 pages. Chapter 2 is 6. Chapter 3 is 6 pages. Chapter 4 is 13, 8, 17, and 19. Chapter 7 is 19 pages, and that's the largest one on that 1 through 7. And then chapters 8 through 14, page 20, you got 26 pages on chapter 8. And remember I said that there was approximately 25 pages per chapter because the book was going to get out of control. So chapter 9 is 31 pages, chapter 10 is 26 pages, chapter 11 is 20 pages, chapter 12 is 17 pages, chapter 13 is 22 pages, and chapter 14 is 19 pages. I tried to keep them within the 25 page range because these chapters are going to be books in themselves, and they're probably not going to be books. They're probably going to be how-to guides. They're going to be predominantly graphics, very little reading, and I'm also going to create templates to where if people buy this book, they're also going to get the templates for free. They're just going to get them. And that's the premise of edition 2 of Inside Sign Design. That's my goal. Now, is this a lot of work? It is a massive amount of work. That'll take a long time. But once I get some things settled and out of my way, I can get to doing this stuff if things would cooperate. Getting rid of COVID. Chapter 2. What goes on a new project drawing? So this talks about things that I've seen, the reason why things go on a page for these people that are going to read it. And I've also seen so many bad drawings that I have covered, like it says right here, a few important pointers for designers and sign designers. Do not use before and after. The reason why I use existing and proposed as opposed to before and after is because before and after is telling the customer that here's what it looks like and here's what it's going to look like after, when that's not true. Here's what the sign is existing, or if there's a sign at all, and then we're proposing a new sign. That's more true. And you want to do things logically and more true business so that you look more professional. Okay, so then the reason why I covered typos, for a would-be sign designer, no typos please. I have found so many sign design drawings with typos, it's amazing. Now if they make a sign that's spelled incorrectly, it comes back to the sign designer. Be prepared. Make sure somebody is proofreading your drawing. Now for electrical sign design, what I've discovered is a 4-page paradigm. I cover that here. 15 years after the fact that this book has been released, I still use this 4-page paradigm. And you can see that here. I'm going to insert an updated look of this 4-page paradigm. And then I cover building elevations, breakdown. So we're probably going a little bit too in depth on this. So that's chapter 2 is pretty robust. I haven't been through this a while. Presentation components. So this page breaks down presentation components. So this is very important. Of course, the graphics doesn't look too nice, but this page is very important. I would get familiar with this page and this page too, and that page. And then chapter 3, the sign request process. That's my buddy Dave. He lives in Georgia now. You could just skim through some of the stuff that doesn't apply to you. Some of the stuff I add, if he's ever talking to a salesman, that he can speak the salesperson's language. Yeah, you need a business card. Give me the business card. Get a clipboard. Did you get a tape measure? Did you do everything right? Did you take a photograph? So I add all that stuff in there. And then I show a sample of very successful salesman's sketches. Chapter 4. Sign material and fabrication knowledge. Okay, so I guess we're just going to make one big long video because this book is so big and so robust and it's so in depth that what I would do is pick what chapter you want to focus on and just do that one chapter. That's what I recommend. To focus on one chapter. And then when you've went over it a couple times or you want to skip to another one, that's what I would recommend. So this chapter 4 talks about sign material and fabrication knowledge. This is very important to go through. Chapter 4. I would not even worry about the other chapters right now, but this one is very important. This materials used in the sign business. Just get familiar with this stuff. You don't have to memorize it and know it exactly. If you print this page out, this book was designed 11 by 17, 8.5 by 11, and you can print this page out and blow it up, hang it on the wall, and memorize this information. If you want it simple, just remember there's two things in the sign business. Just remember that, two things. Most signs are made out of acrylic and aluminum. If you start with that foundation, acrylic and aluminum, in time you'll figure out that we don't just use acrylic, we also use polycarbonate, also called Lexan. And then there's tough glass, and there's photopolymers, but injection molded plastic. But acrylic is the single most called out product. So if you just know acrylic and aluminum, you're rolling. Of course, there's other things besides aluminum. There's zinc, there's bronze, there's steel, there's Corten steel, there's stainless steel. There's a lot of different metals, but the most common is aluminum. If you learn that acrylic and aluminum, you'll be fine. No one knows that. So let's go. There's tips and tricks. I would go skim through this. This stuff's probably still applicable. Chapter 5, page layout and presentation layout. This one's good too. I would recommend this if you're starting sign design. Again, there's the 4-page paradigm. There's a lot of information in this book. Production files and production drawings. You can read this one too. So let's go to chapter 7. My uncle and aunt in Texas. Back my dad right there, right here in the 50s. Chapter 7. Okay, chapter 7, this is good to know too. I would get familiar with that stuff. So there's a lot of information in here. Every chapter is good, even after 15 years. This stuff's still relevant, up to date, and valid. Now see, chapter 8 starts as electrical sign design. So I think chapter 8, let's check it out, is electrical, 9 is electrical, 10 is electrical, 11 is electrical. So 4 chapters are electrical and 3 are non-electrical. Chapter 12, 13, and 14 are non-electrical. So let's go back to this. So when you read this and read this, the goal in mind, designing signs, the focal point, this is the 4-page paradigm. So when you're, let's just say page 2, sign specifications. When you're designing a sign, any sign, you have to think in your head, oh, I need to write the specs so that the fabricator can make my sign. You've got to learn the basics of writing specs. And then this concept rendering page. Most sign companies just want that one page. They just want to sell the sign. Well, that's good and bad, and you'll learn that, because what the salesman doesn't realize is all the other information that has to be added so they don't screw up. But they're so in a hurry to sell signs that they'll inadvertently screw you up, so you got to be on them. This is the sign attachment detail, which we're going to talk about in my other book that I'm going to make a video for, because that was so hard for me to learn that I wrote an entire book on it. Just this one page. Again, this is a 4-page paradigm that I found to be the way to make sign permit drawings. So this 4-page paradigm is based on a sign permit drawings. And this Google satellite map are no longer being used for most big cities. Most cities want a line art drawing. You can still get away with some cities, but most cities are now changing over. So let's go to guidelines. This is very, very important. So anything in red, everything in red for designing channel letters, very red. Pre-design and setup, yeah, I forgot about all this. This is pretty in-depth. And then what I do, where it says design signs, a sample sign design request. So this is a sample. And what I highly recommend is when you do presentations is learn how to straighten up photos that the sign salesman gives you. Can't take a photograph with the life of them. Straighten them because they look better. Your sign designs will look better with straight photos. And then steps to designing channel letters. This step, all these things, I highly recommend going through this. This is detailed on how I do it. And the reason why I used a brick building and I used a raceway here, and that letter type, I used it for a reason. I could have used a flush sign, I could have used no raceway, I could have used a flat building or FS wall or concrete wall and not a brick wall. I did this for a reason, because these tend to have a few idiosyncrasies that graphic designers and sign designers are not aware of. So I wanted to use the hardest one to show how to overcome all these issues. And then the white keyline border and the blue channel letters, the blue vinyl, is dark translucent vinyls don't light well. Dark, translucent vinyls don't light well. So in time, you're going to learn how to provide solutions to yourself. One of them is what is called a keyline border. So then, that's my funky way of doing 3D. And then these little red fans, all they are is pointing to how to write sign specifications. So if you go to the second page, it goes to line 2 and goes to the last line. So all they're doing is pointing out specific things. And then there's leaders, like this H corresponds to this. The L's or the I's correspond to this. Let's go back 2 pages. So all the A here is represented here. All the B here is represented in B here. And so that's how chapters 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are done. 13, or it's 14. Yeah, it's chapters 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's a bunch of them. Let's see what they are. Chapters 8 through 14. Chapters 8 through 14, there's 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there's 7 chapters that have each chapter 8 through 14 has a step-by-step that shows how I do things and break it down. And no one's ever done this before, by the way. And how I prepare the photos, removing the address, saving the photo, presentation drawings. These are step-by-step, all the things I do, designing the channel letters. And you don't have to follow these steps. You can do the channel letters first. You can prepare the photos last. But when you have to build the drawing, you got to have the photos prepared. So that's channel letters on a raceway. This is a more detailed one. Let's see here. So that it just breaks down everything. Chapter 9 talks about monuments. So again, you'll get to right here, page 131. This is where it steps to designing a sign monument. So anytime you see those little red circles, that's where it begins to down how to do it. And then I show a before and after. I photoshopped that because there was something there that needed to go bye-bye, because if you don't get rid of it, it'll show you it in the background of the sign when you put it in here, and it'll look horrible. So it also shows you how to Photoshop it out too. Okay, and this basic monument template is the basis for which to start. How you design after that is up to you, but the reason why I was taught to do it like this is for installation purposes. This was designed to make it easier to install, so when you read this, it'll make more sense. And this applies to the pylon signs in the following chapter. So there's your red fans again that explain everything, that have corresponding letters. So there's the final. They wanted 2 of them. There's the final picture. Of course, it doesn't look that good, but if you go back to the original, there's the original photo. Let's see, there it is. The top one is the original. Remove and discard. That's the original photo. So then this page here, you can add this. So if you don't want to use the photo because it looks too bad, or you don't want to fiddle with it, you can do a drawing like this, which is a facsimile of reality. You don't have to use a girl, you can use a guy, you can use a silhouette image. I'm not too happy about doing the ABCs anymore. I just actually put the stipbacks straight on the drawings. How you do your dimensions, up to you. How you do your background colors and all that, it's up to you. How you even design the signs. But this will show you step by step and what it takes. And one of these days I'll make a video on it. But then if I make a video on it, I gotta monetize it somehow. But these are samples. Here's some samples. These are samples. And then chapter 10 is identical to the monument sign, except it's bigger. That's all it is. It's just bigger. Identical. So it breaks it down. There it goes. Same type of premise of making it easy. When you design it, you have to make it easy to install. And if you don't know, you ask the fabricator. Don't ask a salesman. They don't know anything. Unless the salesman is the owner and they're willing to talk to you and collaborate with you. So there it shows you the beginning of a pylon, the second stage of a pylon, the third stage of pylon, and the fourth stage of pylon. It's like step by step. It just breaks it all down. Let's see here. There's some samples. Chapter 11, electrical message centers. So I tried to talk to Watchfire when I built this. Watchfire is in Danville, Illinois. And it was manufacturers. It's very, very difficult to deal with manufacturers. I would say Gemini Corporation is the exception. They were great to work with. But dealing with manufacturers in general is just a big headache. So just understand there's a difference between monochromes and full color RGB EMCs. EMC is the correct term, but people just call them LED displays now, or an LED sign. People want to make up their own terms because they don't know what an EMC is. So just use EMC on your drawings, but you can put in parentheses LED sign, and understand that terminology so they don't make you mad and there's confusion, because there's lots of confusions between salespeople and a graphic designer. So this talks about how to draw up an EMC, and again, it breaks it down step by step. Here it is, just basic, awesome, simple stuff. And how I did it in just a few pages is beyond me. So hopefully that helps. So chapter 12, directional sign design, and those are some horrible examples, but it gets the point across that you can use fancy lettering and it's horrible. So readability is key. So when you're reading this chapter, readability and visibility and legibility is key. And when you go through this chapter, it'll show you the difference, because I showed the person in there, because most wayfinding books, and there are books on wayfinding, they don't show little people there viewing the signs. And the one on the left is the before, and the one on the right is the after. And since this is a book, I can show you before and after, because this is not existing and proposed. These are all examples how this is an actual History Town is an actual sign, and I bulked it up to make it more readable. And so this is what this chapter is about, is making your wayfinding readable. That's all it's about. Just make it more readable and legible, and still maintain the design. Don't make it gaudy. Don't use bold letters that are just horrible. Put some design thought into it, but make it, the letter anatomy, weighty so people can read it and see it. And legibility. Okay, so that's that. Chapter 13 covers interior signs. And as you notice, this layout, you can do them any way you want, but this layout covers everything. It shows you the rendering, shows you the attachment detail, the specs, and the dimensions all on one page. And it's clean and easy to read. That's another key when you do your drawings. Is it easy to read? Does it sell to the customer? And can everybody in the process understand your drawings in a second? If they have to look for stuff, and if you make it like a code, you're wasting your time. You're pissing them off. You're gonna have to redo drawings. They're gonna ask you questions, and if they constantly ask you questions, you're missing the point. You want to make your drawings to where it's easy to read, and you want to make them to where it's fast for you to draw. Okay. So here are sign types, major categories of sign types. This is very important. Disregard the yellow. It's horrible looking. ADA sign is a sign type. A sign panel is a sign type, whether it's an ADA sign or not. It's a panel. A dimensional letter, non-illuminated, is a sign type. Cast metal plaques are a sign type. Wall directories are a sign type. And custom sign, which would be, a unique shape that's not normally the sign type that we sell in the sign business. Now there's certain sign companies out there that sell these Southern California University signs all day long, but I have found the most commonly sold sign types are the ADAs, sign panels, dimensional letters, cast metal plaques, and wall directories. These custom stuff, those are commonly sold too, but I put them at the bottom because I personally don't come across them that often. And I've worked for 3 companies. I've been the lead designer for 3 companies in Los Angeles, so we get a lot of business. So category G is window vinyls, another, that's a sign type. And number H is specialty, non-illuminated. There's no picture, I don't have that. It's just anything that's off the cuff or different and unusual. So that would be non-illuminated specialty category. It's not a big deal. There's so many different variations on how you would label that. So here's some samples of corporate signs that look pretty good, so I thought I'd show it to you. That's interior signs, non-illuminated, and don't need a permit. That's interior signs, this stuff. If you just design this for sign companies, they'll love you. Okay, so then I break down ADA signs. Now, the law changes on ADA information, so this may not be up to date, so don't use the actual ADA information verbatim. Just know that these are the layouts and how things would be attached and dimensioned and spec'd, minus the specifics on the ADA Braille or the grade 2 Braille. Then I talk about sign panels. So I guess this chapter is going over each sign type, right? So it's explaining how to design interior signs, okay? And so all these sign types that we covered from the beginning, these sign types, they'll fall under the same category of this layout. So this layout can be utilized for any of these sign types. Of course, you can invent your own layout. And so this breakdown can be used for any sign. Now, you don't want to use it for vinyl because there's no attachment detail required for vinyl. And some signs that are sold straight to the customer where the customer is going to install them don't need an install drawing, don't need a side view. So you're going to learn this when you're talking to the salesperson and they're giving you the information. There's so much excessive information that you're going to be categorizing it and making the sign drawing accordingly. So these are just different ways you can install the sign, guidelines, recommendations, design interior signs, sample sign design request project 1. So this on page 228. You start the first example where I start steps to design interior signs, where I show you just make a gray box and then make a slight angle like this is if you were designing this, and then add the color, add the dimensions. So that's all this is if you notice here how I leave a big old opening here in the beginning. You look at this and you go, oh, that's horrible looking, right? It is horrible looking, trust me. But then when you go to this page, you're adding another dimension, and then you go to this page, you're adding the interior dimensions. So as you learn, if you know you're going to be adding more dimensions, then your outer dimension is going to be furthest away from the sign panel. So that's why that was like that. And then you're adding the specs. You can add the specs first, and so each chapter talks about, or almost each chapter talks about writing sign specifications. So I have another book specifically on this subject that is going to correspond to the attachment detail book. That's another video. So that's interior signs. Okay, so I guess this is sample sign design request project 2. So this is a second example. So I vectorized that city of Lawndale. That's in Los Angeles County. So here's another, this is for cast metal plaques. So this shows you an example of how I'd make a cast metal plaque. So that was their logo, and I vectorized it. Once I vectorized it, then I could make a line art, and then I could make it look like that. So that was the process of showing you how to make a cast metal plaque. Then chapter 14, another non-illuminated sign type, designing ADA signs. Of course, again, this information may have changed. Some of the wording, some of the coloring that I'm seeing now for unauthorized vehicle parking signs, they don't look like this. I think they're black copy with white background. They're very common. They're almost square now, so they're everywhere. So yeah, look at that 3D thing, looks pretty good. Did that manually, made that manually. And then this can be a premise on how you would make parking signs, but I would make these a blow up to the side. So this is just an example. And then regulatory signs, and then I add the California ADA because California is out of their mind, so they want to add a new different type of sign. And these are all some of the examples. There's so many types of interior ADA signs, a lot. So that could be a whole different book in of itself. So these are some examples of like Gemini and Advanced Corp. So Advanced Corp provided these pictures, so I added them to the book. So this book is, if you're designing channel letters, I'd go to the channel letters chapter. If you're designing ADA signs, I'd go to the ADA chapters. I'd focus on what you're going to be designing the most and focus on that, and take what's in the book, but don't do it exactly like the book. Do it the way you're comfortable with. Add elements from the book to your way of doing drawings. Do your drawings your way, and don't worry about being perfect. Just do your drawings. Add stuff from the book that's applicable. Discard the stuff that's not applicable, and in time, you're going to get good. You're just going to get good, because nobody had these books when I was drawing. I didn't have this book when I was drawing. You're getting a head start from a lot of people. Now I've sold 25 copies of this book, so you're one of 25 people that has this book, and 25 hard copies. You got the last copy. So we're not going to talk about chapters 15 to the rest, because I think this video has been pretty long. Yeah, 43 minutes. So hopefully that helped. You can watch the video over and over again, or you can scroll through it or speed it up. You can, on the YouTube, there's a little gear logo, and you can speed up the video with that. Hope this helped.